Hi everyone, hope you're doing well. Welcome to week 8, where we're getting deeper into the How Does a Poet Make Meaning essay. Specifically, going to be introducing the full draft, the first full draft you'll be doing, which is the second draft of the essay. We have 5 videos this week. 3 of them are specifically focused on the reading for the week. So the 3 Mary Oliver essays, one of them diction, tone, and voice, the other one imagery, and the last one sound. The sound video will also incorporate reflection on Charles Baxter's Inflection in the Breath of Life. Because we're going to look at Mary Oliver's sound chapter and Charles Baxter's chapter this week as some of the best models for us to imitate skills for the final essay, specifically how to structure the essay and how to develop examples for the essay. But that's getting ahead a little bit. I'm just going to use this first video to introduce the full draft. I'm going to put the prompt up on the screen, walk through some important elements for you, and let you know about some requirements that I'm going to make in this video, but then also are going to be expanded on in the videos in the rest of the week. So let me get this pulled up. And we'll just walk through this really quickly and be done. I'll also be posting this with the video so that you can have access to this document. It'll be in the modules. So this is the second draft of the final essay. This is the full draft of the How Does a Poet Make Meaning. I'm going to reread some of the prompt here, and I've added some sections and then also highlighted some sections that are important to you. So what we're doing in this essay is writing a persuasive essay that develops a focused argument about how a poet makes meaning. You are being asked to choose one of the 5 technical skills a poet uses to make meaning. Line breaks in syntax is one skill. Diction and tone is one skill. Imagery and metaphor is one skill. Sound is one skill. And then form and pattern is another skill. So you're going to choose the technical skill and attempt to persuade your audience to understand poetry from a new perspective. Your essay must establish a complex context that has shaped your audience's old perspective. So the important thing to note here is that this is not an informational essay. This is not a summary that just explains how poetry works or what poetry is or what imagery is. That's not what we're after here. We're after persuasion. We're persuading our audience to understand poetry from a new perspective by teaching them how one of these technical skills works in poetry. So the secondary kind of purpose of the poem is that the poem can be thought of as a defense of poetry. It needs defending. It needs arguing for. And you need to persuade your audience to see it in a new way. It says locate a personal connection to your audience and the topic, and feel free to use anything you've written or read up to this point to help you develop your argument. So I added a little note here, a note to explain the kind of dual dynamic of this essay, one in which you're persuading your audience to understand how your technical skill works, but then also using that to persuade them that poetry has a certain value that you want them to see. I'm going to refer to Barbara Holland's Cats to kind of give you an illustration. Because remember, Barbara Holland's Cats was first and foremost an argument about the joy or pleasures of cats. That was her main topic. That was the focus of the whole thing. But her argument also defended the joy or pleasure of an unpredictable, spontaneous, and wonder-filled life. These are qualities that she said cats exhibited. And we can see that part of her purpose was to use cats almost as a metaphor for this larger argument, this idea of living life and embracing the unpredictable and the spontaneous. So the topic of your essay is the technical skill. That is your topic. I cannot say that enough. A poem you choose to analyze is not the topic of your essay. Poetry is not the topic of your essay. But the topic of your essay is the technical skill, like cats in Barbara Holland's example. but the outcome of that argument about the technical skill should also be the defense of poetry. So let's keep moving on. But the important thing there was this is persuasive, and your main focus, the main topic of your essay is the technical skill. Your final essay must use one poem from our poetry packet or from any of the essays about poetry we've read so far. So if you see a poem that has been highlighted in any of the Mary Oliver essays, for instance, Elizabeth Bishop's The Fish, which is in the imagery essay, if you want to analyze that and use that poem in your final essay, you can, or you can just go from our poetry packet. So you have to choose one poem from our poetry packet or from the essays we've read so far as an example to be analyzed and show the technical skill you're writing about in action. So in the last poetry video that you submitted where you analyzed the poem, you kind of did a full analysis where you said this is the meaning, and some of you talked about imagery and diction and line breaks, and you kind of talked about a lot of different elements that made up the meaning. You did the same thing with the saying, talked about the different elements that helped develop the meaning. But for this essay, you're going to analyze the poem only through the lens of the one technical skill. Now, more on that when we look at Mary Oliver's sound chapter in a video this week, but I'm making the requirement there just so you know. But your final essay does not need to focus on one poem only. You can make your argument about how a poet makes meaning and use multiple poems as evidence to support your claim. Again, more on that when we talk about choosing examples in the Mary Oliver sound video. The essay should be 6 to 8 pages minimum. I put this in here before, and I'll say it again because it helps us define another requirement for this final essay. It's talking about adding your voice to the conversation. So, as we discussed with our readings of Barbara Holland and the In Defense of Essay, an argument that you choose to make about a specific topic is directly dependent on the audience you are writing to, who, of course, has their own ideas, beliefs, opinions, theories about the topic you're writing about, and a specific context you identify. So you always identify the audience you're writing to and make choices about how to write to them and to really develop your argument about your topic based on what your audience already thinks, believes, so on and so forth. With this in mind, you practice acknowledging that the unique idea, belief, opinion, or theory that you have about your topic needed to be made to that specific audience. Your topic needed defending to that specific audience. But understanding our audience's perspective on a topic isn't where we stop. When we decide to make an argument, we must realize that there are other voices or writers out there making arguments about the topic as well. When we choose to make an argument, we are basically joining a conversation that has been going on before we even started thinking about it. That does not mean that part of your audience is Mary Oliver or Charles Baxter or Kenneth Koch. That just means that there are other writers out there like them who are talking about the very same thing or very similar thing that you're talking about. And you need to be aware of what they've said and what people discuss. You're joining this conversation about poetry and its technical skills and trying to describe it, define it, and persuade your audience to see it in a new way just like they are. So this ongoing conversation is central to your essay, and you're going to have to show that you understand the conversation and add your own ideas, beliefs, opinions to the conversation about the skills posed used to create meaning. To show that you understand the ongoing conversation, you are required to quote from at least one of the essays we've read about poetry, or a different essay about poetry that you find in your own research. Joining the conversation doesn't mean just finding what other people have said about poetry and its technical skills and using their quotes to make your claims for you. No, you're making your own argument about poetry and this technical skill that is specific to your audience and the problem you've identified. So your claims are generated from you. Now, you can use quotes from these other writers to support your claims or to develop your claims, because we know that quoting or evidence is one of the ways we develop an idea. But I just want to make that distinction too. Not summarizing what other people have said, but making your own argument and using what other people have said to support your argument. So that's another requirement. So you're required to use as an example one of the poems from our poetry packet or from the essays we've read. Requirement that this is a persuasive essay. You're required to focus on one skill only, and you're required to quote from at least one of the essays we've read about poetry. So these requirements are going to be seen and practiced and discussed in the rest of the videos this week. As I say here, the remaining videos this week will explain in more detail what the expectations and requirements of the draft are. They include developing a definition of your technical skill and of poetry. So we know definition is the first mode of development or mode of discourse. So how are you going to develop that? Videos 2 and 3, which look at 2 of Mary Oliver's essays, will discuss that. Finding audience-specific examples to illustrate your technical skill. Video 4, which is about Mary Oliver's Sound and Charles Baxter's You're Really Something. We'll focus on this. Also, video 4 for this week is going to talk about choosing a poem that best represents your technical skill in action. And then lastly, we're going to talk about quoting and quote integration, quoting from a secondary source and integrating quotes or your poems or text from the essays we've read into your essay. And that will be in video 5. Video 5 will also be followed up with a discussion assignment. So, that is the basics for the week to come and for the first full draft of the How Does a Poet Make Meaning assignment. Some basic requirements that we'll expand on later this week. So until then, I will see you soon, and looking forward to reading your first drafts of the How Does a Poet Make Meaning essay soon. All right, bye.